blockchain is supposed to be immutable. That's the whole point. Transactions get confirmed, blocks get added, nobody can go back and rewrite history. Except this week, Litecoin did exactly that. They rolled back 13 blocks, erased confirmed transactions from existence. And the reason they had to do it? A critical zero-day vulnerability that, according to their own GitHub commit history, they already knew about, a month before it was exploited. This is the story of how one of the oldest cryptocurrencies in the world got hit with a bug they'd already quietly patched and never told anyone. On April 25th, the Litecoin network experienced something that's not supposed to happen, a 13-block reorganization. That means 13 confirmed blocks that miners had already validated and the network had already accepted, were wiped from the chain and replaced. The cause? A critical zero-day vulnerability in Litecoin's MWEB, the Mimblewimble extension block. MWEB is Litecoin's privacy layer, added back in 2022. It lets users send confidential transactions where the amounts are hidden. It's one of Litecoin's flagship features. Here's what the attacker did. They crafted a malformed MWEB transaction, a specially designed piece of data that broke the validation rules in a way that unpatched nodes couldn't detect. Those nodes accepted the bad transaction as valid. As far as they could tell, everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. The malicious transaction allowed coins to be pegged out, essentially extracted, and routed to third-party decentralized exchanges without authorization. The attacker was bypassing Litecoin's transaction controls entirely, and this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment attack. Blockchain analysis shows the attacker pre-funded a wallet 38 hours before the exploit went live. They had everything set up and ready to go. They knew exactly what they were doing. But the really clever part? The attack had two stages. The first stage was the actual exploit, the malformed transaction that siphoned coins. The second stage was a denial of service component specifically designed to knock patched nodes offline, so the unpatched ones would form the longest chain. Think about that for a second. The attacker knew some nodes had the fix, so they built a DOS attack to take those nodes out of the picture, ensuring the vulnerable nodes would dominate the network consensus. That's not script kiddie behavior, that's surgical. Now here's where the story gets really uncomfortable. After the exploit, Litecoin's development team released a statement saying this was a zero-day vulnerability, meaning a previously unknown bug being exploited before developers had a chance to fix it. Except that's not what happened. CoinDesk journalists went digging through Litecoin's GitHub commit history, and what they found contradicts the official narrative. The fix for this exact vulnerability was committed to the Litecoin codebase approximately 1 month before the exploit occurred. Someone on the development team found this bug, wrote a patch, and merged it into the repository, privately, quietly, without any public disclosure. The problem? That patch was never broadcast to all mining pools. It was never flagged as a critical security update. There was no coordinated disclosure, no CVE, no advisory telling node operators to update immediately. So when the attack hit, a significant portion of the network was still running unpatched software. The attacker presumably saw the patch in the public GitHub history, commits are public, realized that not everyone had updated, and built an exploit targeting the gap. This is a textbook case of what security researchers call a patch gap attack. You find a quietly fixed bug, check who hasn't applied the fix yet, and hit them during the window between the patch existing and the patch being universally deployed. Now, Litecoin's team has pushed back on this characterization. They say the earlier commit addressed a related but different issue, and that the specific attack vector used was genuinely novel. But the GitHub timestamps tell a pretty damning story. The fix was there, it just wasn't distributed. And here's the thing that should make every cryptocurrency holder nervous. This wasn't some obscure DeFi protocol. This was Litecoin, one of the original cryptocurrencies, created in 2011, market cap in the billions. And their response to a critical MWEB vulnerability was to patch it silently and hope for the best. That's not a security strategy. That's wishful thinking with a Git commit. So how did Litecoin actually fix the damage? They did something drastic. The development team coordinated a 13-block reorganization, a deliberate rollback of the blockchain to erase the illegitimate transactions created by the exploit. In the cryptocurrency world, a reorg is basically the nuclear option. You're telling the network, those blocks you confirmed, they didn't happen. We're going back in time. Every legitimate transaction that occurred during those 13 blocks had to be revalidated and re-included. The Litecoin team says all legitimate transactions during that period remain valid. They were simply reprocessed in the corrected chain. But the principle of the thing is deeply unsettling, because if a developer team can coordinate a rollback of 13 blocks, what's the limit? 20 blocks? 100? At what point does immutable ledger become immutable unless we decide otherwise? This isn't the first time a major cryptocurrency has done a reorg. Ethereum Classic famously suffered multiple 51% attacks that caused chain reorganizations. Bitcoin SV had reorgs. but those were external attacks. Litecoin's reorg was a deliberate, coordinated decision by the development team. The network is now patched and stable. The vulnerability has been publicly disclosed, and all major mining pools have updated. But the damage to trust isn't so easily patched. This incident exposes 3 uncomfortable truths about cryptocurrency security. First, open source doesn't mean transparent. The code was public, the patch was public, the Git history was public, but the critical context, that this was a serious vulnerability requiring immediate action, was never communicated to the people who needed to hear it most. Second, privacy features increase attack surface. MWEB was added to give Litecoin users confidential transactions, but complex new features mean complex new bugs. The more sophisticated the protocol, the more places things can go wrong. And third, the immutable ledger promise has always had an asterisk. When push comes to shove, human coordination can override mathematical consensus. That might be necessary sometimes, but we should be honest about what that means for the trust model. The Litecoin 0 day wasn't just a bug, it was a stress test of cryptocurrency governance, and the results are mixed at best. The code is fixed, the chain is stable, but the question of whether patch it quietly and hope nobody notices is an acceptable security practice for a multi-billion-dollar financial network, that question is going to follow Litecoin for a long time. If this story made you rethink what immutable really means, hit subscribe. We break down stories like this every single day. Drop a comment. Should crypto dev teams be required to publicly disclose vulnerabilities the moment they find them? I want to hear your take. See you in the next one.